Before we start our video today, I wanted to bring to your attention a recurring issue concerning my David Gordon Green's failed Halloween trilogy video. There was a user who responded in the comment section by questioning how the trilogy was a failure, which I discussed and gave the merits of in my video, and proceeded to mindlessly list off various amounts of money that each film made while denouncing my claim as being absurd. And I found myself laughing because, by his logic, I shouldn't even be making Halloween videos and instead should do videos praising Captain Marvel as one of the greatest films of all time, with its sole merit being that it made over $1 billion. So, is Captain Marvel somehow better than Halloween 2018 Kills and Ends simply because it made more money than the whole trilogy combined? If we take this logic further, apparently any video on YouTube that isn't monetized is automatically bad because the creator didn't make any money. People know that just because a movie makes money does not mean it's good, and just because a movie did not make money does not mean it's bad. I mean, look at all the channels that trash the superhero films every year. Those movies make hundreds of millions and sometimes over $1 billion, and they still have people who say they're not good. This is not an economics class where we crunch numbers. I'm trying to discuss what makes a quality story. I just want to point out that this is not the comment I'm talking about, as I deleted the other one. But it's the same thing essentially. Cry about the title, don't address anything I say in the actual video, and mindlessly cite how much money the trilogy made as if that bars them from criticism. My main point here is that if I make a video and you leave an antagonistic comment that doesn't address any of the points I make, I'm not going to respond to you. My video is my comment, and if you can't understand what I put into one of those, then any attempt by me to write something to you would be pointless. I feel like if I can take the time to make a video where I write a script, record it, edit the audio to remove stuttering and errors, then you should be able to take the time to watch it, because it'll take significantly less time for you to do that than for me to make it. Halloween Ends came out a few weeks ago, and it's been met with some polarizing responses, not unlike Halloween Kills. Much of its praise and criticism has been centered around the character of Corey Cunningham, arguably the most important character in the movie besides Laurie. I think he's a very interesting character, probably the best one made for the 2018 films, but he's failed by a lack of planning, rushed development, and non-organic storytelling. Before we get started, I'll give some praise. I think Rowan Campbell probably gives the best performance in Ends, and he's very good at portraying Corey at the various stages of his personality that we see in the film. When he's a happy, regular guy at the start, when he's sort of by himself and off in the wilderness in the middle, and when he's fully consumed by the evil of Michael for the third act. You have a lot of fans who are mad that Corey turned out to be the film's main killer. I am not one of them, because I don't share the same devotion to Michael that many fans do, in that I care about him about as much as most fans care about any of the other characters. And I'm totally fine with someone else being the villain. I would be content with a Halloween movie that doesn't even have Michael in it and just has Laurie or some other Haddonfield people trying to take out a copycat. I've always been a fan of the idea that the evil in him that possesses him to go out and take the lives of others is something that could happen to anyone. For years, I've wanted Halloween to have other villains. It's one of the reasons why, despite me not liking Curse of Michael Myers, I don't mind Dr. Winter the Cult of Thorn as a concept, and only drew issue with Michael's origins being excessively explained and him being subservient to them. I even have some fondness for Sartain, but that's a subject for another video. Halloween Ends. I like it so, but it is a very cramped movie, and its runtime makes a lot of sense given how much story with Corey has to take place for its plot to work. You have to introduce him, give him a scene or two that shows him as a well-meaning young man, have the tragedy happen, show him in his new reclusive stage of life, begin his flirtation with Allison, have him meet Michael and start acting different before beginning his path of murder, not unlike our regular villain. Keeping all of this in mind, it's not hard to understand why some fans, myself included, think this character should have been introduced before this movie and have had his plot play out as one of the main plots of the trilogy. So let's talk about his interactions with other characters. As goofy as I thought it was that he was getting bullied by a high school band, I thought his continued antagonism from them was a good subplot for his arc, because it showed what it's like to have the same couple of people in this small town messing with you after you've already had about as much as you can take. I also enjoyed the various instances where other characters spoke negatively of him because it was a good example of show don't tell, where his persecution for a genuine, albeit fatal, accident is made very apparent. But where I start to take issues when it comes to our recurring characters. Hawkins mentions knowing Corey when he's flirting with Lori at the market, but we never see the two interact. Lindsay meets Jeremy's father, who describes an encounter with Corey after the latter met Michael that disturbed him. But we don't get to see either of them talk to him. And look, I may seem crazy for wanting him to interact with characters like Hawkins, Jeremy's dad, or Lindsay, but remember what we were told about ends. David Gordon Green said last year that Halloween Ends would be more intimate than Halloween Kills. So I don't think I'm wrong to believe that our lead character, who is persecuted by his town, should have people that survived the previous Michael murder sprees, like Hawkins or Lindsay, interact with him and give their opinion on him. His romance with Allison is probably the weakest part of his character to me. The reason for that is because she seemingly becomes obsessed with him from the moment that they meet and is completely unwilling to see anything wrong with him after he meets Michael and looks into his eyes. This romance would have been so much more interesting to me if they had become a couple off screen and then we just had scenes of them talking to each other, laughing, enjoying each other's company, etc. Then after Corey meets Michael, she starts noticing a change in him. And while she doesn't disbelieve her grandmother, she's very suspicious of this new behavior until she finds out and then wants nothing to do with him. I think this approach would have been preferable to what we received because you would have seen them as a loving couple and then as a couple where one still loves the other and one is kind of mixed but still cares for the other. And then finally, the disillusion where she realizes what he's been up to and works to stop it. We never received that, as Allison doesn't realize Corey is a killer until after he's died. So we don't get any scenes of them talking to each other with this reveal. So much wasted potential. By the way, if I ever make a video about Allison and talk about her in Ends, it'll just be me lamenting that she's basically a prop for Corey and Lori to have a personal conflict with each other. The movie really glosses over her trauma from the death of her parents outside of like 2 lines and just turns her into a horny love interest for the villain. Corey, 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 Corey. Shut up! If I were to rewrite Kills, I would have the Jeremy incident happen the same night as Michael's murder spree in 2018. And someone at the hospital tells Lori about this. Lori mentions that she knows Corey. He's mowed her lawn before out there in the woods. And then we get some scene of Corey requesting to come see her at the hospital. When he arrives there, he's very concerned about her and is just as worried about Hawkins. And this establishes that he cares about these people. And while he's at the hospital, he tells Lori about what happened, states his fear of what people will think of him. But she calmly tells him that she knows he's a good person and that she will be there for him. This adds about 7 or 8 minutes of more material to Kills, but it's a connective tissue that is going to make Lori coming to help Corey at the gas station and subsequent concerns about him that she has more profound. I want to make a comparison. In the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, Harry Osborn, one of the main protagonists, gradually becomes less sane and more vindictive against Spider-Man until he becomes a full-blown supervillain in the 3rd movie. Now, Spider-Man 3, a movie I really like, has its critics, but the character development for Harry that was part of the 1st and 2nd films is generally well received. Part of the reason for that is because it was a plot point that was given enough time in the first 2 films without being the main plot to feel like a well-constructed thread that would be paid off gradually. It's important to note that the Blumhouse Halloween trilogy was intended as a one-off with the 2018 film. I mention this to confirm that unlike Harry, we were never going to get a 3-movie arc for Corey, as it's unlikely that this character was thought of back when the 2018 film was in production. But there was a way to do a character with this same story arc and have it develop over the whole trilogy. In Halloween 2018 in Kills, Allison dates Cameron Elam, the son of Lonnie Elam, a minor character from the first movie who reappears in Kills. In the latter film, both Cameron and Lonnie are killed by Michael after they enter his home. Instead of killing off Cameron, this plot point could have been rearranged to have Lonnie die in a heroic sacrifice to save his son and Allison, and any further scenes of Cameron in Kills could have been him dwelling on this. In Ends, we could have had the now fatherless Cameron several years removed from his dad's death and sinking further and further into despair until encountering Michael and deciding that others should know what it's like to lose their life. One of the reasons Cameron works better, in my view, is that if he and Allison are still together at the start of Ends, then they have been a couple for over 4 years, and it makes it more believable that Allison not only believes she has a future with him, but trusts him to an extent possibly greater than her grandmother. So I think he probably would have been a better choice to just keep developing Cameron, keep him alive, and have his relationship with Allison progress while he's going down this dark path, instead of introducing some new character out of nowhere. So Corey attacks Laurie. It fails spectacularly. He stabs himself in the neck and somehow survives that, and then he is killed by Michael when the latter enters Laurie's house to reclaim his mask. I was very upset that he was killed off, at least before the final fight, because it felt anticlimactic to me. Like, we're going to spend most of this movie developing a character who doesn't even figure into the final battle. When Michael was standing over him, I thought about Sartain and his death when he was stomped, and thought Michael would do the same to Corey. It's kind of interesting how Corey is basically Sartain 2.0. They both steal Michael's mask, attempt or do kill someone else, and play some indirect role in leading him to Laurie. The problem here is that while Sartain has a few scenes in 2018, he's obviously not the main focus. Corey is that for Ends. So him getting killed off before we get Laurie versus Michael round 3 just makes everything he went through feel kind of pointless. Blumhouse insisted that Halloween Ends was the final part of their trilogy. This continuity is over, and it promoted Ends as being the final battle between Laurie and Michael. That makes their choice to introduce Corey and have him kill more people than Michael even more bizarre. Why create a new main character in the last act of a trilogy who for most of the film takes the place of the usual antagonist and is just going to die before the movie even ends? I guess my problem with Corey is that he feels like a concept that you would come up with if you're trying to keep a series going, the idea of a younger successor to Michael. But you're trying to execute this concept in a movie that you are adamant will never get follow-ups in any capacity, and thus your idea comes off as a strange choice. So I think Corey is a good character, and Rowan Campbell gives the best performance of Ends besides maybe Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm a proponent of Halloween having additional villains besides Michael, and it was a genuine delight to see the filmmakers actually do something different. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's good. The Corey character is failed by being introduced in the final film of a trilogy, having rushed relationships that could have been given more time if he had been introduced earlier, and basically taking the place of Michael in what was supposed to be the end of his story, or at least this version of him. I think Corey deserved better.